All right, we're back. Let me just check on my volume is a little bit clippy. Maybe I'll do this a little bit quieter. Trying to get this microphone to kind of work better. I think I'm going to put the gain up at 50, but put the microphone right in front of me maybe. I'm not sure. Gonna try it slightly to the side. I've been trying to get the audio level correct. It seems like there is some loss in here somewhere. Maybe it's the filters that I have set on OBS, but it seems like I'm quieter than most other YouTubers. But if I try to get this gain higher, my the audio starts to clip. Anyway, one day I'll figure it out. I don't know if it's this microphone that's causing the issues or what, but it's a Rode higher end microphone, not cheap. So yeah, if you have an OBS setup that works well for you, feel free to share, especially if you have a Rode microphone, because that's what I'm using. So all right, back to the task at hand. So we have this nice application that we wanted to start with this new piece of functionality here for voting on subjects for our conference, for our participants. But we took a detour to really kind of clean up the code base, because we've been experimenting with a lot of concepts and some conventions, etc., to the point that, you know, some of these tests here, like actually all these tests, we really don't want to have, by default, we don't need to even have a test case, since these given when then scenarios can be automatically, you know, populated, and a test can be run simply doing a property comparison between all of these, and you get all your unit testing for free. Again, something controversial that I'll say and that we've been doing is that once you're done with one of these workflow pieces, you really don't, like in a traditional application, you don't go back to refactor them or visit the code because some other feature needs something more here. In event sourcing, you really decouple functionality from each other. So we rarely have to run the unit test to see if we're going, you know, if we're going to wreck something or not. So the role of unit tests, or testing in general, takes the shape of really just talking about specifications, because these tests really are showing how a timeline looks in terms of the events that have happened and how certain commands are expected to behave at any point in time, and also for showing how any particular projection, report, screen, anything that you're reading from the system, how that changes as more information is added to the system. That's pretty prescriptive, and we don't have to have bespoke tests right now. So if right now I'll go to our application, I can show you what I mean here in the code. Because here we have that representation of the graphic I just showed you with a test with having these asserts. So this is kind of where we got to yesterday. And what we want to do is really remove this test altogether. I'll show you the automatic test runner. It kind of builds up all the previous. So for example, if we were to test this command, we would have the setup as these two previous events. That's the given. And then when is this command happens. And our assertion, or set of assertions, is then, which is then we get this event as a result of this command. And this is pretty conventional for us. Like, we always do this kind of assert. So, you know, 99%, 90+% of our testing is going to be that. I think we can still offer the ability at a particular checkpoint in time, which is really what these are. These are checkpoints. These places on this timeline. You have this arrow here. So on this timeline, we can say what events have happened so far, and then when we do if there's something that needs to be tested along the way, we can actually, show that command. And the reason we do that is because this is the command here that's active in this part of the in this part of the workflow. So I would basically say that I have an idea of where, this command can be executed in an example timeline. And the goal is that we're basically showing multiple places where this command can be invoked along a realistic history that we can create. And so what I would say is that I have kind of a convention here that where this test runner just goes through these steps, and every time that it sees a command, that knows it's got to test something, right? In these steps here, we don't have anything to test, so this kind of gets ignored, and we have an example of that here. We have a whole bunch of events that just happened. They're probably nothing to do, or maybe they have something to do with the naming. So in this case, we do have something that's to do with the naming of the conference. But again, we don't want to have a test every time we do something similar. We don't want to test the same thing. So here we're omitting the command. We're just saying, assume that this already happened. Doesn't matter that there was a command here. But when we do have a command, we always pair it up with a test. And so my idea here, because this is quite standard in terms of what we do, basically, comparing properties, is I should be able to remove this test and have our test runner assume that because I have a command shown, I want to test that command. So let's take a look at the test runner that we have. And what it does simply is it takes care of 3 different types of tests. So they're all here. I've just highlighted them. And graphically, we can see them here in our given when-thens. So the first test that we have usually is a given when-then that succeeds. So given some events, these 2 in this case, when I try to do this, let me move this layers out of the way, then I have, as a result, this event. And so you can see that this is given some events, when I try to do something, then I get this event. So that is this scenario here. However, we also have failures. So we have something like, given that I have all of these events in my history here, when I try to do this command, I have this failure. In this case, it says no request exists exception. So we don't have a request to create a new provider, like a conference ID or whatever we're doing here, and therefore we get an error. So when we fail validation, we can throw an error, and our application should not allow the system to accept an event that would put us in a bad state. So that's this is the so this would be the exception, right? So if the checkpoint has an exception, then we have same setup given a history of events when I do a command, but then my checkpoint is the exception, right? So that's exactly how we would run it. And then the last one that we have is really the read side. So this is all to do with commands and 2 scenarios of a failure and a success. If it's a success, we still need to further check that we have the right information passed back as success. In terms of viewing state or seeing projections, we don't have any action. We're really just subservient to things that have happened in the past. So there's really no chance to throw an error. I mean, if we do, we're expected to catch all errors and maybe have like another collection in this model here that would maybe have something written to that. And so then our UI could, or other logic could respond to that accordingly. So yeah, hopefully that kind of explains what we're doing, and I'm really trying to show you here how how we're going to kind of make the code a little bit less less of a hassle, because as you can see, even graphically here, we have all of the data that we need. So even outside of code, we could take this graphical representation and actually run real tests on our solution. So that's the goal. And let me just check that we're still live here on YouTube. We are, yeah, and we got audio. So I hopefully it's not clipping too much my voice, but yeah. So let's continue with this here. All right, so basically, if we have a checkpoint, we have a command. So we have a state change test. We go ahead and call the test. However, let's delete the first test and try to get an automatic version. So testing success, what we really need here is say if checkpoint test I think that's all we need to do. So if it exists, right? Then we do all of that. Else, we want to do a property-wise, do a property-wise comparison of a checkpoint event and okay, so that's the other thing, is we have to have a way to know which command handler to invoke. So this would be a good time to maybe think about naming conventions and perhaps associating a command handler with the command type or something else similar. So we would call we would make a command prototype next to our first time that we use a command here. Command name you didn't throw. Okay, so here's the place where set conference name. And just like we have these processor registries here, we only have one processor in this, but we have a lookup for processors. I wish the processors were not... Oh, here they are. They're just paired with this instead of that. So the list of processors and notify processors really has both of these together. And so we also kind of want to have maybe a mapping of, these command handlers, right? So we could say function. Actually, we could have the similar thing to what we have for processors. We could have command handlers, and actually we wouldn't have them here. We would have them somewhere here. In fact, this HTTP stuff actually belongs higher, and the processors is more toward the type of solution we have, which is event sourcing. That should actually go lower. I'm going to move all of this down here. And yeah, that's good. We have a collection of processors, and anytime we have a strong convention, I guess we kind of want to have a repository of where all these things are. So we have commands or command handlers, maybe. That sounds good. And here we can have, I don't want a string lookup. I really want the prototypes of the commands to be here. Although I'm not sure if that's even necessary. And it might be just commands, because we really want to look up the command handlers by the command. So if we do a commands and then do, let's say, set what's our first command here? Our first command would be set conference name. We don't even name the commands except in the we don't even name them, right? It's just the fact that there is a command, and it's really about we're kind of tied to the resulting event. So that's kind of a thing I want to push, because a lot of times we have this idea that a command can give you multiple events as a result. And I kind of disagree with that. I think if you have that, you have to make some arbitrary decisions as to which one gets written first and all sorts of things. I'd like to introduce a processor in between if I want to ever have a command emitting two events. So this is where I would want to have that level of control. So we do have a type for the resulting event. So I think what we need to do is hitch onto what commands are responsible for what events. So instead of events in commands, we want events here. Because notice we don't have a type in this test. The command just shows whatever. We know that they're highly correlated. And so the other question that's going to arise is if we tie them to the event. Sometimes commands have more information than the event itself. So we're going to have to add data to these things. And so we're going to have to use as a prototype the event itself, which is tricky because we have the past tense of this. And I don't think we're actually using any names of commands because they're the imperative thing. And I kind of dropped this entire concept from the solution, which is pretty interesting. Notice there's no type on commands, right? It's just known that I'm going to be running this specific. It's almost as if command handlers are going to be associated with the event, and the data within the command itself is really up to us to describe however we want, including inheriting some of the properties that the event will have, which is interesting because the type, the meta information here should be stripped in order to get the command. We kind of don't want that. So let's see. What's a elegant way to talk about events? I guess we have the type by name, which is okay because we already do a comparison by string for types, event types for handling them. So I think it'll be okay to also use that same convention to figure out, the events and what command handlers they came from, right? So something like conference named comes from the command handler set conference name. I think that's good. Because we don't need, we have, command is just a parameter name. Notice that we don't actually ever think of an object. It's just there is an object that's a command, but we never really persist it. We never really make a schema for it or anything like that. Because the event is the central focus of all this. So and I think, we've had these discussions a long time ago in the community about, commands mostly being a mirror image of the resulting events. And sometimes they have extra information just for validation purposes, like maybe if some validation needs to check that your total amount of orders that you have doesn't go over a threshold, and your command handler really can only read the history of the current order because you have that type of implementation. I mean, that gives, there's another whole discussion there whether that command handler should be restricted to that particular ID. Traditionally, we do that, so we can explore both sides of pushing that information in. There's scalability concerns here as well. You don't want to have to read all of the other orders to be able to scale how you treat one. And that's why you usually have a, what a green box has as a current total count to allow things to be done that way. But as we're doing these dynamic, what are they called? I get confused with these acronyms now because it's the dynamic consistency boundary that we're experimenting with, meaning that for this command handler, I actually don't want to think of a traditional aggregate and that it's only looking at this one order with this one ID. I want to say that I want to look at all orders that are currently outstanding. And so now you get into an interesting indexing question and really, what is a projection, and, can you include, how can you actually include some of these calculations on looking at extra events? So we'll get to those interesting questions as we move forward. But there's definitely, things to be gained by dropping kind of the kind of dogma of DDD and the aggregate concept. It's a good guardrails and a good safety net, but once you become good at event sourcing, you notice that you can start to loosen some of those things and tighten them in other aspects, in other ways. So we'll experiment with all that. And I think if we keep things at the file level, we could see these concepts really emerge organically instead of having to get lost in some patterns books and all that. We can just look at the integrity of the system, much like the Git history and the references that it has pointing backwards, and nothing's really there until the last reference changed and that whole new tree becomes active. So we can use these concepts here too, and I think it's quite powerful because once you get a convention going, these things become, incredibly easy. So I'm thinking that this is okay, but I think what I want to do is really add these where they belong, because I don't want a whole repository of them here. And I think it would also be good to change the processors this way. So I kind of want, yeah, this is interesting. So I want to move this down to where we actually have the this particular command handler, and I want to do events, a conference named set. See, it knows what I want. This is good. This is good. Okay. So I think that's better because the idea is that I don't have to swim around the whole solution because everything that I have for setting conference name is kind of like in this area. It lives together. So I see what's going on here. So I would just want the collection up here to be initialized to be nothing. And I think I want to do that with the processors as well. Because now I want to go to where the processors live. See how it's just, this stuff's just sending us down these rabbit holes. But I like the fact that these rabbit holes are finite. And I think after we do this test part, I think we continue on with another sprint of using this for the next set of slices to keep working on it to finish the solution. And then we'll also have, we'll find opportunities to improve our conventions, and we'll do this again after, maybe next week once, hopefully the changes in how we do the infrastructure and the conventions will become not as drastic, because now we have some non-trivial amounts of logic in here. We have, some error cases. We'll definitely get to some more complex things like alternate workflow paths entirely. We still haven't tackled some of the security stuff with some of these IDs that are coming up very shortly. So I'm sure we'll just continue to make these really good conventions, because when we have these conventions as something simple, like having these, this kind of template for how you handle a command, Cursor AI will be able to really understand this convention. I can also, copy paste this and gouge out the specifics of this business logic, and give a prompt the structure, which would be incredibly powerful for being able to have AI really prompt us very, very quickly, especially if we add some extra comments after each specific line that kind of gives us, kind of explains why we're doing event sourcing, how we're doing event sourcing, but use terms that the AI has already made inferences in the regular way of working. So something like immutability, open close principle, some of these types of things. If we put those names in there, it should be able to correlate some code that is more friendly to how we're doing things. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to become simpler. So yeah, this is something that we need to do. So we're going to do this, and now so now I have a processor's push, right? So yeah, we do that, and then that. Okay, so now we have a better syntax for this. So we have events and processors. This processors thing is really a function that we call at the end of updating to-do lists so that processors get notified. So we want that up here because that's part of kind of our events infrastructure. And I kind of want these, yeah, these guys are okay here. Push event. I think these might actually live above these state things. Why is this indented? Right? Incorrect. So that's correct. Okay. And yeah, that's okay. So we have this actually lives on here. It's closing this one. Yep, that looks good. Sorry, just thinking out loud here that I probably, because these are to do with HTTP handling and all that, I actually want these lower. I want everything here about the events and processors to actually be above those. I think that's good. And that brings our synchronization time here to the correct place. I'm having a problem here with the processors being an array and this being a collection. I think it's because we iterate over the array and we use the events as a lookup. I think that's why. So they actually, the fact that this is an object and that this is an array makes sense for the way that we're using these collections. With the processors, we have to iterate over them all, so we want that to be an array. With the events, we're looking up a specific event from our testing side to see what we want to what command handler we want to run. So this is where that needs to happen. But this processor needs to be, this lookup needs to go down to where we have our processor actually being used down below in the code. So let's make that association right next to the code that happens at that time. So I just cut that out. So we have processors, connect collection. Actually, I do kind of want to have them together. It is. So anything to do with processors here, actually we need to have this together. Okay, so everything to do with processors is here, nicely together. And we only have this for a collection of events. And we should say events lookup. Right, so this should give us, where's our events lookup? So here it should be events lookup, right? Okay, good. So we renamed that for us. And it's nice that we're, we're setting this up right here, right next to, I'm interested even if we could substitute this command for having this on the same line. The reason I'm doing this, it's only because I have everything in one app.js. And as we've seen in the previous sessions, the merge conflicts, when you have just anonymous kind of closing braces on a separate line, it gives, some problems. So for example, here, now we have an event meta type conference named, right? So conference named has this running. So let's continue to fix our test runner, actually use that. So we could have this. So if we don't have a test, then do a property-wise check where we can say we still have the same given when then, but we do, instead of checkpoint test, we run, let's look at how we formed that test. Double check that we're not going to miss anything here because we have some conventions in the test runner. So here, so we kind of want to inline all of this. So I'm just going to copy it and see if our AI will be able to gather the gist of generalizing this. Not really holding my breath for it to get it right. So if we do that, this is kind of what we want. We want the result. And we events lookup, right? Checkpoint event meta type, yes. And then we want the accumulators events, acc events, yeah. And we want to do the checkpoint command, correct? And then we want to assert for each property. Right, so here we have for each key, right? So checkpoint event. Yes. For each property, assert for each property that it holds same value. Now, this is one of the benefits of having pure functions when you're testing, is they can make this type of assurance that I know that these functions are mathematically pure. That means for the same input, I'll always get the same output. So I don't have to worry about a date time changing on me because I have some date time now calls in these things. That is simply not allowed in how we're building things. And therefore, you can do some of these things that are considered bad practice in testing, where you have a test that tries to make too many asserts and all this. I used to subscribe to that. It's like, no, if you understand that this should have this form all the time, you're not testing implementation. You're actually saying that this is adhering to the spec, period. The behavior you see in the timeline. So you're not really going to gain anything by ignoring some of these properties. So let's see if this actually... Okay, but that's just properties. Check property names. So and that they exist in both objects. And then we can say now check their values. Right? Oh, that's the same thing. Okay, so for each key, okay, so we're just checking that. What we should do is really break this up, because we're going to say check if key exists in result. Doesn't exist. Okay. Okay, we can clean this up later. I just wanted to work first. Check that result doesn't have extra properties. Okay. In the resulting event. Okay. Okay, so we have that for each key. Now we should skip meta because we don't have anything there. Meta property. Right, okay, so that's good. Now it's kind of wordy. I know what's going on. I can delete all these instruction comments. Oh yeah, and of course we do need that that meta check here. We simply don't care. Okay, good. I'm going to have to go in 5 minutes, but I hope this makes sense. I'm going to come back after my meeting. So I have a meeting that I'm going to have to jump off to in about 10 minutes. But I hope this this makes sense, how we've basically made sure that our testing now does an expected event result check against what we have as the expected value. So the implementation of this, it will throw out a result and we'll compare it to what we specify here. And this diagram exists in code here. Let me scroll to it where we got it here. So basically this is what we have. So we have a type and the name. Oh, we forgot the type. So we have to double check that the type of event. So we do actually check the meta type. So that's what we need to do explicitly, that we have the same types, because those both have it. And then we ignore any extra stuff, because we might have some things in the meta where actually we can do that as a single step. So we can do, you know, an assert. I'm glad that we have all of this stuff with slices and all that here, all that instrumentation. So it knows that I need to do this type. Oh, okay, great. See, assert that this equals should be checkpoint event meta type event, but was. There we go. I think that's really good. So we have all the asserts that we want. We're gonna, if we do end up shoving some extra helpful information in the meta data, then we kind of want to get rid of that. So let's see. Let's just see if this works. I'd be very surprised if it does. Surprisingly, it worked. Color me surprised. Testing timeline happy path. First name should be set when requested. So is this part of happy path? What's our name of our test? Oh, so we don't, okay, so we don't have the name here. First name should be set when requested. First name should be set when requested. Okay, so we don't have, oh, I see. We have to delete this for that to work. That's the test. So I'm just going to be brave and delete it. And now I'm going to run it. And we have fewer tests passing, which is bad. We don't have the output. I don't think that's, it didn't fail anywhere, but there is no result here. So I think it was just about capturing the result like the other one does. Let's double check that we're running it correctly. So So we have that, and then we run if this is that. Then we do a checkpoint test. So we run the tests. Test, okay, so we get the test name. Okay. So this is where we are actually I'm quite surprised that we're not getting anything here. So just do a log. This via properties. Do we even hit that? Oh, this is the summary. So no. We print out the summary at the end. So there was an issue because we didn't, we never hit this. We never hit this. We probably got caught here somewhere. And it just didn't end up, so something wrong with the structure. So we should be able to see that in our output. It'll be buried at the top of it all here. Fortunately, I do have way too many console logs for when we run these things. Yeah, so we should be able to also clean up this excessive amount of logging. And I can't even get to do that. So let's that's interesting. It's not even giving us any output here. Pardon me. Let's check visually here what we're doing again. So I think it's this if test. How are we checking for doesn't equal undefined? This might be the key. We still have 32, so we still have a problem. That was not it. So are we doing else throw? Okay. Countered. So we definitely have, we're in the command. We definitely have an event and we don't have an exception, which is important. And if our test is defined, then we run it. Otherwise, we do this. So, okay, let's see if we actually got that output. Tests are running. Conference named. So that's interesting. Are we even getting to this here? Running tests with stream da da da. So tests are running at checkpoint this. Checking progress, checking for tests. Checking progress market, checking. Okay. Oh, right. So this is the problem. So we need to really get rid of this. So it doesn't matter here. We should be running this. We should move this down. So I have to go, but one of these things that we have to do is move this test into the place below. So yeah, this will fix it. So I'll be back in about an hour and continue the stream. So until then, yeah, give me questions if you like on the Discord channel, and I'll be back to answer them in an hour. But we're almost there, so exciting to be able to get this going in